Wheatgrass and Champagne podcast. I'm your host, Mandy Rose. I'm a holistic health coach with a passion to help others find balance in their life. My belief is that we can indulge in the amazing things life has to offer, like champagne, but still stay healthy using holistic approaches. Tune in each Wednesday to hear interviews with unique holistic entrepreneurs, learn practical tips on finding balance in your life, and get all the behind-the-scenes details of what I do to navigate my own health journey. Nothing is off limits in this series, so grab your shot of wheatgrass or your glass of champagne and prepare to upgrade your life and start healing. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning back in to another episode of Wheatgrass and Champagne. This week's episode, I didn't know if I should call it a champagne episode or a wheatgrass episode. We are talking about health and healing, but it's a really fun way to look at health and healing using energy medicine. And this is a topic that when I talk about, people think I'm totally woo-woo and spiritual and like out of my mind, but it was such a big part of my healing process. And when you're really sick with a chronic illness, whether it's fibromyalgia or mold toxicity, Lyme disease, heavy metal poisoning, so many of these things really have a big root cause in emotional distress. So do you ever notice that in a period of your life where you're really, really stressed out, if you could look back in your life, during those moments of high stress is typically when we become ill. I think back to when I went to college, it was a big move, a big transition. I ended up getting mono. Or when I ended up moving to Florida and it was a big transition in moving across the country, I ended up getting diagnosed with Hashimoto's and then later celiac disease, 2 autoimmune disorders. And then this last one that happened about a year and a half ago that I talked about on part 1 and part 2 of this season really stemmed from a lot of disconnect with my spirituality, a lot of emotional trauma, a lot of things that had come up for me. And although I was doing the supplements and getting medical tests and lab tests and CAT scans and everything conventional, it wasn't until I realized the emotional and energetic component that was missing that actually propelled my healing forward. And I was so lucky to come across an amazing doctor, Dr. Nyree. She is on the podcast today, and that's why I wanted to share her gift with the world and allow her to help explain what is energy medicine. Because when I came into her office, I just wanted her to give me a bunch of pills, supplements, herbs, whatever, just make me feel better. And her take on it was so much greater. She felt my soul. She felt my soul was tired. She knew that my chi and my life force energy was just gone, and I felt exhausted and fatigued. She helped me really open up my intuition and my ability to know for myself what is right and what is wrong and what helps me. So I'm really excited about this episode. She talks all about it. But before we dive in, I want to talk a little bit about energy medicine. What is energy medicine? And we all know that energy exists. It cannot be created. It cannot be destroyed. And there's so many different versions of energy, right? So I'd like to break it down. We know that sound, smell, touch, all of those things are just energetic waves. Sound is just an energy frequency, and then we hear it in our ears. We're able to translate it into words. Same thing with sight, right? What we're looking at, the rainbow and the sun and stuff is just energy, light energy. And same thing with smells. So we have to look at how do these senses, how do these feelings end up affecting our well-being. And so some of the healing modalities when it comes to energy medicine is really simple. When you look at smell, essential oils, those trigger a healing response in the body. Touch is another form of energy medicine. So Reiki and massage, that physical touch. And even though Reiki, you're not touching the person's body, you're having an energetic exchange. When you look at sound bath healing, sound meditations, listening to meditative music. Everyone knows that music can really lift our soul and our spirit and make us really happy. So music is a type of energy medicine. Then you also have things like chakras, like energy centers in the body. And this is a hard one for a lot of people to understand. But if you look at what we know about the heart and the brain and different organs in our body, is we know that our heart runs on electrical impulses, on energy transfer. And same thing with our brain and the sympathetic nervous system, neurotransmitters. They're all electrical impulses that communicate with each other. And so when you're using something like chakra balancing or acupuncture or something that's able to help the flow of the energy in our body, something as simple as always having shoulder pain and you have this big knot in your shoulder can block the energy from your brain going down your spine into other parts of your body. So this communication that's happening between our muscles and our organ system, our brain, all these things can get blocked. Whether it's maybe having a vertebrae out of place in your spine and it's pinching a nerve, which is electrical communication, or it's something greater than that, like it's your life force energy or your soul just being really tired. So I wanted to give a really brief overview before we jump in with Dr. Nyree. A little bit of background on her. She is an osteopath, which means that she is conventionally trained as an MD. So she went to school for being a regular conventional medicine doctor. But then she also branched into the holistic world where she practices everything from supplements, energy medicine like Reiki. She is also trained as a shaman, so she's able to look at your soul and integrate her intuition into our healing. She can do IVs. She also does a lot of beauty treatments. So she is a woman that I admire so much. She has encountered so many patients with so many different illnesses and helped them get better using a blend of all these healing modalities. And she was a saving grace to me. If you want to know more how she helped me, tune into episode 1 where I talk about my healing journey and just praise her. And really keep your mind open during this episode because I feel like there are so many points that she makes that are outside the box that we don't think about and can really help you think differently about your healing and your body. I think so many of us were all just taught that our bodies are just physical and we can fix it with some form of physical treatment. However, our bodies are so much more than that. So if you're on a healing journey, you seem to not be getting better, maybe open your mind and look at how energy medicine can help you. So you never know until you try. And I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. So here we go. Everyone, welcome back to Wheatgrass and Champagne. Today's guest is one of my favorite humans on earth, and I know I say that about so many of my guests, but this one is so special to me. She's one of my healers. She's one of my good friends, and I always like to say she's like a modern day medicine woman, because to me, it sounds like you can do it all. So hello, Dr. Nyree. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hi, I'm so excited, so happy that we finally got together and are doing this. I love that I can be here with you and just share what we both do and share more of myself and just help whoever we can help.
Yes, I know we've been talking about doing this episode for over a year now, and you're so busy, and then I was so busy, and I was healing. And so right now, it just seems like maybe divine timing that this message is supposed to get out. And when we were trying to pick a topic, I'm like, okay, she could talk about anything in the healing space, pretty much anything about like healing or whatever. And I'm like, how about we talk about energy medicine? Because that's something we both kind of understand and we try to talk to people about, but some people maybe don't understand it clearly or they're skeptics about it. And I feel like maybe this episode, we can get some clarity for some people and break it down in really simple terms. So that's kind of my goal. And I know that you've been doing energy medicine for a while. So you're like the perfect person to come in and talk about this.
No, that sounds good. That sounds perfect.
Can we start with maybe you explaining a little bit of your background, whether it's where you grew up or, how you got into medicine? Like, I would love to kind of hear your background story.
I am originally from the Caribbean, and I moved to New York City when I was about 13 years old. So in my background, growing up on a Caribbean island, we did a lot of natural medicine. It's just kind of ingrown into the culture. So you get sick, you go into the backyard and, grab some leaves and some bushes and some herbs and you come in and you make these teas and different potions in terms of like things that you can apply to your skin or even ingest that would create rapid healing. So it was kind of, in me from an early age. And, back then, we really were living off of the land more. So, even in terms of like our meat, if we were, eating meat, it was coming straight from the farms that we had. And so we weren't exposed to as much toxicity. So I think the natural medicine part of me was just very supported from an early age. And then I moved to New York City, and that was a whole different experience, right? So I come from this like amazing farm life, and we go to the backyard, pick what we're gonna eat, and milk the goats and the cows and bring it in. And then I go into New York, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? And even though it was so exciting and fascinating, it was also such a contrast, in terms of how I was living life. And when I started like going to high school and, kind of getting exposed to things, I realized that I had such a passion for learning more about the sciences and natural medicine. And I knew at that point I was going to be a medical doctor. Like it was just in me. I had the brain for it. I loved the sciences. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And I decided I was going to go to medical school, which I did, and I became a medical doctor. The interesting part about that is, as I was on that journey, my grandmother, who I was, kind of more developing a relationship with in my teen years, I came to find out that she had these really interesting gifts. And part of her gifts was that she could interpret and understand energy. And what I mean by that is, in our modern day terms, I guess we would call her clairvoyant, clairaudient, things like that. And she had these abilities, and I didn't really know too much about it. I just knew that people would come to her because she could do things that no one else could. And I was just like in
Oh, wow.
amazement. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like from telling someone, where in their body they needed healing to telling them where to find their lost keys. And it was just really interesting. So I was just observing, and I just saw that she was this really simple woman. But there was something about her, and she was just so spiritual. She would get up. She always told me, rise with the sun, rise with the sun. And she would sit there and do these meditations. And I would be hopping and skipping around her. And I swear she wouldn't even budge. And I'm like, this woman, like nothing is going to, like, it just didn't affect her. I was just so in awe of her. And then what I started to realize, and this happened really during my teen years more so, I actually started to notice that I had some similar gifts, and I was able to not just hear things or feel things, but that were, I guess people would say, in kind of the unseen spaces. I also, I had this way that I could really interpret what was happening with people and around their energy fields. So then I decided I'm going to medical school. So here I am, this kind of different, and I'm in, doing the classes. And I thought, okay, I'm in these rooms with these patients and I'm in the hospital, but the information I'm getting isn't just in their chart. It isn't in the history that I'm asking them. I'm hearing things in my head and I'm sensing things from them. And I'm getting this depth of information that is helping me so much more to treat them than what they're telling me with their words. And I had to find a way, like, what do I do with it? At that point, my grandmother had passed away. So whatever things I had learned from her, I now knew that I needed more support with. So I started taking classes when I was in New York on energy medicine, on understanding the chakras, different types of healings. I worked a lot with the natives of South America and really learned and understand shamanic medicine. And so I was raised Roman Catholic and I'm learning shamanic medicine. And I was like, this is so cool because I really honestly, for some people, it might have been such a contrast, right? For me, what I thought was really interesting is that it deepened my love of God and of understanding how much bigger we were than what we see. And I started to learn how to apply the information I was getting. So I went through medical school and it was a very different experience for me because, as my team is asking the patient questions about their health and, their symptoms, I'm listening to the other things. And I have to be honest, like, I was able to help people so much more quickly because of it. And I felt like, wow, it gave me a little insight, but I also had to be very aware and understand what I was responsible for and what I wasn't. And those were some of the things I learned as I took these classes and worked with the natives in South America, New Mexico, upstate New York, and really developing my gifts. So I came out of medical school, graduated. I am a family practitioner. And I decided from day one that I was not going to do conventional medicine. It just wasn't for me. I wasn't going to practice pharmaceuticals unless absolutely necessary. And there's no judgment in that. It just wasn't for me. So I decided right then and there, I'm going to do natural medicine and I'm going to
Oh my
attract the people
goodness.
that want this. So I started studying Chinese medicine, acupuncture, homeopathy. Now I do many, many things like a lot of the intravenous therapies, a lot of detox, kind of what you would call, I guess, life coaching in some ways, just all the different things that could really support a person in the body, mind, spirit, like we all talk about it. But for me, it was so important to really understand that I'm not going to help anyone unless I look at those pieces. And I'm not going to be the kind of doctor that's going to just treat the physical. The physical is the end point, it's not where it starts from. So now the way that I practice is by looking at the individual and kind of deciphering which is the way that they're ready to let things kind of in and where they're going to allow the most movement. And we start there. So that might be physical, it may not, but whatever it is, it's all going to tie in together. So that's a little bit about kind of where I came from and how my world looks the way that it does.
I love that because before I came to you, and I had known you, as a friend and in like our social circle during my healing journey, but it wasn't until I came to you. And I have to say, you've spoiled me now because I don't want to go to any other doctor because it's that part of you where you bring in the spirituality and you bring in the energy and you bring in that part of you, that intuitiveness that other doctors don't have. And so I was seeing doctor after doctor after doctor, and they were doing exactly what you were saying, just looking at the chart, just looking at the numbers. And we are, thank God, have a lot of doctors that are able to do that because they can save our lives in many situations. But it wasn't that like piece of the puzzle that clicked for me and turned on my healing until I met you and came to your office. And you kind of connected those dots for me. Like you were able to see my energy and kind of say, okay, you're doing all the right things. You're eating healthy, you're resting, you're taking all these supplements, like you're doing the things, but your soul is tired. And I'll like never forget how you said that to me. And I was like, I do kind of feel tired, but not like tired in my body, like just tired of life. And that's like such a gift that I think, when society catches up and understands that doctors can have both, right? We can blend the two. And like you said, pharmaceuticals sometimes are absolutely necessary. And I remember the time when you're like, okay, you really need this. I know you don't want to take it, but just like nibble a little bit off of it. I need you to do it. And I was like, wow, I really respect that she gets where I'm coming from. But at the same time, like you're well versed and you're like, listen, we're going to do whatever it takes. But, we need to like continue expanding your energy. And so that energy medicine part like really clicked for me. And I think there can be a blend, right? Like, how do you feel like your industry looks at you when you're trying to blend the two? Do you feel like there's a disconnect, or do you feel like you've kind of merged yourself where you do get respect from the conventional side and from like the holistic energy spiritual side? How has that like kind of worked for you?
So
Yeah.
that's been an interesting journey. Between you and I guess
Yes.
everyone now that's listening, I mean, in New York, I mean, no lie, I was literally called the witch doctor, like literally, right? Because people, they look at things that are different and unknown and they kind of want to put a label on it. And for me, really, this, what I'm talking about is, and what I saw my grandma doing was really what is natural to us, and that sometimes we've kind of forgotten, or we put in a category of, it doesn't look like it's coming from God or a higher place. And unfortunately, that's a big part of what I feel my passion and my light is here to do, is to really transform and change that belief and those approaches. Like, we're actually using more of ourselves and incorporating the innate things that we have within us by listening to our intuition, or utilizing our senses and our body and these higher parts of us, right? So when we decided to come to this planet, we were like, okay, I'm light, but I'm going to condense myself and I'm going to come into this body. Excuse me. So we had to take all that energy and like compact it now into a form. And that does change things, right? So it's like, the parts of us that are higher vibrating, they didn't go away, but they had to change to take on this form. And with this form comes different things like polarity, right? Now we have hot, cold, we have expanded, contracted, where when we're just light, everything is just love, expanded, free. There's no hot, cold.
Yes.
So coming into this body changed that. And, for me, when you ask about, how has the journey been? I mean, it still is. It is better to some degree. But, when I tell you that I have had to stand up and really own who I am, and the proof, I guess, for me, or the part that made it easier is the fact that patients were getting better so quickly. So
Yes.
what was happening is the people that didn't believe or didn't trust, or like, someone would go to the GI specialist or the cardiologist, endocrinologist, etc. And then I'd get a call from those doctors like, what are you telling my patients to do? Like this is like really like, this isn't medicine. I don't know what you're telling them. Like, and we would kind of disagree in the beginning. And then I would be very scientific with them. I would meet their needs the way that I felt, would help the patient. And then I would say, respectfully, just give me 3 months. Give me 3 months, 2 to 3 months, and let's see what happens. And then the magic would happen, and the patients would start getting off their meds. Things would start changing. And I would get those same doctors. Listen, I will never forget this. About 2 years ago, a cardiologist showed up to my office at lunchtime, and I get a message in my room, hey, so and so is here to see you. And I said, okay, great. Maybe he wants to talk about a patient, something happened, or who knows. And I swear the cardiologist looked at me and he said, I now have about 25 patients, like mutually between the two of us. What is it that you're doing? I want to know right now, because those patients are getting better way more quickly and effectively than anyone else in my practice. And so for me, it's not me ego, Dr. Nyree. It's me like, this is what works because it's connecting with who we are. And so I've gotten some flack for it. And, I got to stand up sometimes and say, okay, here's where I draw the line. And there are times when I'm going to have to say, we just have to agree to disagree, but let that patient's voice be heard. That's the most important thing. Whether they want the pharmaceutical or not, like, listen to that person, because what they believe is what's going to work. And if a conventional medical doctor isn't vibing with what you want, it's probably not going to work. So we need to look at how do we make it best for the individual that's involved. And that's the most important piece.
Yeah, that's huge. And it always like brings me back. I remember reading a study, when I was really sick, and it's all about talking about how when a patient trusts their doctor, they're able to like heal faster. And when they also feel heard, right? Like there's a big part of us when we're sick, we run from doctor to doctor to doctor, and everyone dismisses you, dismisses your symptoms, calls it a label, and then says, oh, this will just make it better. And then you don't feel better. And you just feel like after 10 doctors that you're like, someone just needs to hear me. Like, I know I'm speaking the words, but like it's not getting through. And so I think you open up a space for every person that comes in your door where it's like, I hear you, I see you, and I hear you. And that alone, I think, already starts turning on the healing rate in the body, even though you haven't prescribed anything or done anything to them. It's just like that ability for them to be like, I'm validated and what's happening to me is real. And then it just lets down everyone's guard. So I'm glad you do that. And I hope, that in society that kind of opens up all across the board in healing. So, and that brought up this quote that I read, and I thought it was perfect for our podcast today. And it says, medicine will only become a truly healing art when biology, mind, spirit, and the environment that sustains us are viewed as one interlocking system. And that was beautiful to me because it said mind and spirit. We don't think of that when we are at the GI doctor or at the cardiologist. We forget that these parts of us are in us. And so how do you think the importance of that spiritual component is to healing? Like, I'm sure you see it every day.
So for me, and the spiritual part is the most important piece. And the way I look at it, and I like to look at things very scientifically, which is why maybe I feel so comfortable when I'm doing what I'm doing, because my mind also needs to have that confirmation that what I'm doing makes sense. So if we understand, and again, this is all scientific, that what we're seeing in front of us, meaning our physical bodies and forms, they're all created from what is unseen. So, what I mean by that is, let me just start on the physiological level. We can't see what a hormone looks like. We can't see what a neurotransmitter like serotonin or dopamine looks like, right? But we know they exist. We know they can be measured. So every time I have a thought or a feeling, there are hormones being released, there are neurotransmitters being released that will then create a certain physical form, ailments, wellness, right? So the unseen always creates the seen. Then we can take that a step even deeper. Now, what about our thoughts, right? We don't see our thoughts, all of our belief systems, right? All of the things that our soul came in here and said, you know what? This is what I'm going to work out in this lifetime. And we all have this deep light and purpose and passion that we came here to share, no matter how it plays out, no matter how much time we're here on this planet. So for me, that spiritual component is the most important because it's the part that's creating the rest. The physical is not independent of that. It's one and the same. So everything that we don't see is ultimately seen. And there's a time lag between that because in third dimensional earth space, we have time, we have form. That doesn't exist everywhere. So the me I am today is already the past me from a couple of months ago. So it's like we get to transform and do this change and really recreate over and over again, which is so beautiful about the physical body that we have chosen and the fact that we have senses and we can taste and smell and feel. I know that's why I agreed to be here because there had to be benefits to it, right? No one says, I'm going to jump in a body so I can feel pain and I can be sad and have tears and all of. Well, part of it is we want to taste all the flavors in the ice cream shop, but we also know deep down like we're these amazing expanded beings and we came to be in this body to take all of the unseen and learn how to become masters at that, right? It's like a game. How do I master this game and use those parts of me and then bring it into this body and have the best of both worlds? Because now I can really feel it and have those full experiences. And the tears are just as beautiful as the other things. It's just as a human consciousness, we are all kind of revamping what we've been attached to. And I know I can say this in my own personal life. There is so much change happening, like COVID and everything else that's happening as far as all of the racial inequalities, et cetera, all of this deep stuff that's being purged on this planet. I know within me, I'm also feeling that because there's such rapid like core movement and everything that I thought I was holding on to and who I thought I was. I'm like, oh, nope, that's not it. It's time to really do this differently. And I think the world is expressing that and it's a beautiful thing. So the spiritual part is the most important, whether you're religious, whether you're not. Those pieces all come from this deep heart-centered knowingness that I am something more than this. There is something holding me and supporting me that's way bigger than anything that I can see. And that's why I spend a lot of time in that place.
Yeah, I agree. I think that spiritual part, like it's almost like that last puzzle piece that like people don't think about, but then when it clicks, and it really allows you to have that purpose. Finding our purpose always drives us forward. It makes, like you said, the hard things worth it because we know what kind of direction we're going, and that direction might always change. It will constantly change. Everything's expanding and changing, but when you know why you're here, or at least have some clarity into it, like you said, it makes the tears worth it. It makes the struggles worth it. It makes the challenging relationships worth it because you're like, I'm moving. I'm going forward. I have this gift, So I love that you bring that into like all of your healing. So I kind of want to like back up a little bit into like the science because I know you're really sciencey with it too. And I think that is kind of what helps people who are skeptical about energy medicine maybe understand it a little bit better is when they're like, oh, okay, energy is real, right? Like, even though we can't see it, like we know Wi-Fi gets to my computer and I can get on the internet, but I can't see it happening. Or like your microwave, you put something in a box, you push a button and it comes out hot. Like I didn't see that happening. So from your like explanation, the best way you could explain it to someone, what is energy? Like, how does that concept of energy actually relate to like our body? And I know you kind of went into that with like the neurotransmitters and stuff, but can we back it up just a little bit more for someone that's like really skeptical?
If I go kind of really basic, big picture on this, I look at it like this. before I guess we became so complex, like if you look at something that's just one cell or like more simple, right? The first things that we learn how to do is how to interpret something as safe or is it harmful, right? Our entire neurological system is based on that, right? Before anything even comes into my space, like before it touches me, before it gets too close, right? You know how you can say, you're in a room or something, but you just kind of get that feeling like someone's looking at you or someone's approaching and you haven't even turned around, but you can just feel it, right? So we're kind of like designed in this way where we are energetic beings. There's energy interactions with every living form that we see and do not see. And it can absolutely be measured. That's the beautiful thing about it. Like all of these things can be measured. It can be measured in our physiology, like you just mentioned, with looking at how our body's responding, the sympathetics, the parasympathetics, our hormones, the neurotransmitters, right? All the different secretions in our glands. The minute we go into one type of reaction, there's a response. So energy for me is really, how am I interacting with my world and how does that feel? It all gets processed through the feeling state, right? That's the best way for me to identify what's happening, right? How is something making me feel? That is like the filter. And that's kind of the way that we're going to decide what we want to do about it, right? So energy is never created, it's never destroyed, it's just going to take one form or another. And so for people that have a hard time understanding energy medicine, well, how can someone maybe sometimes not even put their hands on me or do these hand motions or do these things or have these devices and it's creating a change? Well, it's because we are expanded way beyond the physical, and we can measure our chakras, right? We can measure our auric fields, and we have shown scientifically that all of these things expand way beyond. And then we're interacting with people that are in our space, people that are not even here. I mean, I can tell you, and I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, where you can be thinking of someone and then in the next half an hour, you haven't talked to them for 10 years and then they're calling you, right? So, like, for people that have a hard time believing it, I try to pick things because we've
Yeah.
all experienced that. So, like, it's like they get it, when you can give them a practical example, but it's hard to believe it completely because you can't see it. And, it was interesting you mentioned the Wi Fi because I'll tell you this whole time of this earth that we're going into, we are moving completely into what I call frequency medicine or energy medicine, because the things that are unseen now are going to create the biggest impact on us. And that can be in ways that stabilize us, and it can be in ways that really kind of shift our balance. And that's where we're all kind of getting, like, we're being stimulated to wake up. Like, our higher selves are like, okay, remember why you came here? So let's wake up and see what you want to do with this, because the things that are changing are going to have such an impact on the way our body functions and our minds. And we don't see them, but we're being impacted by them every single second of the day. So for someone that can't really understand energy, just give them some practical examples of how they have applied that in their lives, and then show them the science of the things that can be measured, and the fact that 5G, that's coming in now, is going to create a lot of change. And for some of us that are sensitive, we're feeling it already. I can tell you, I have made a lot of changes and it's only been a couple of months. And I'm really looking at how we're going to implement moving forward differently. I mean, I'm going to share this, but I'm having a meeting next week with schools, with the school commissioners, with just different heads that are involved in each of the counties, where we're all going to be talking about what can we do to make this frequency medicine different. So if there are things that we're not seeing that we're measuring already, the impact that they're having on us, you better believe this stuff is real, and we're going to just have to step up. And it doesn't take a whole lot. That's the part that's beautiful, and that's what I'm realizing. But we all need to become more informed and do it together.
Oh, I love that. So beautiful. And you like had a light bulb go off with me when you kind of said that what we're experiencing in the physical world really it translates into feelings. And when you said that, I immediately thought of like what senses get stimulated in me that make me happy and feel good. So like I love the smell of vanilla, right? Like It's just like that scent and it makes me feel really good. Or when I like see like dolphins or see sunsets or see, like it's energy. I'm looking at something, seeing it in a physical, and then it's making me feel a certain way. And so it's like the positive and the negative, right? So I have good feelings, but then I have bad feelings. And I think you kind of nailed it when you said you can be in someone's like aura or someone's energy field and like start to feel like stressed out or discomfort because maybe their energy is making you feel all weird. And then I thought of like the word vibes, right? Like vibes is like the pop word, the 2000s, we say vibe instead of energy. So like, would you say when I say like, oh, raise my vibes, it's energy, right? Like that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I always say too, like you can walk into a room and tell the vibe of the room. We have these abilities to sense things that we can't see or explain. It happens to all of us all the time. So vibes and energy to me are so, so real. And I'm glad you brought up the, Wi-Fi and the 5G and stuff, because a lot of people are kind of skeptical. They're like, oh, I don't understand how it could be that bad. I've had a cell phone for 20 years. I've had a laptop for 20 years. I've had Wi-Fi in my house for 10 years. How could this be that much worse? And I just read something that kind of explained it like on an atomic level. Like we all went to school and learned in science class that we are made up of little atoms, and those atoms have positive and negative charged ions, and they like polarize against each other. And the way that they communicate and our entire body communicates is through an electrical field. Like we know that our brain's electrical, our heart's electrical. And so it's having this full on conversation within your body every day, all day. And then you bring this outside weird, like almost like a magnet. I try to like explain it. Like maybe you took a magnet and you like run it over something that already has a full circuit going on. And now this magnet is like twisting things and changing things. And it's kind of what 5G is going to do to our bodies. It's not going to be able to communicate with itself the way it should. And so it is a big deal. And maybe you don't notice it in your day to day. However, I have to say, if I turn my Wi-Fi off at night, I sleep way better. And I've heard this from so many people, but we will notice it over time in our thoughts and in our feelings and the way that our body expresses itself. So I'm really proud of you for standing up and going to do that. So congratulations. And you'll have to keep me updated on how that meeting goes.
Absolutely. I'm sure you'll see a post or two about it.
Please do. If you guys are not following her, please follow her. I'll tag everything in the show notes, like her website, her Instagram, Facebook, all of that. I love the information you put out. And you've been putting out a lot of high vibing posts about just like manifestation and positive development. And I know we're sidetracking, but you bring a lot of inspiration to people.
No, well, thank you. It's mostly because that's what I have to support myself with in my life. And I tell people this, we're all mirrors of one another. Like if I sit here and think that I'm any different than you, and it doesn't matter, if someone has one ailment or 10, or they have $1 million or 50, we're all parts of each other. And the more that we can kind of look, I think I said this to you, like when we first met, like the reason I'm able to sit down and speak to you or relate doesn't mean I have to go through everything that you've gone through or vice versa. But what it does mean is I can feel that human connection between us. And it's so important to understand that every single thing in my story is just a reflection of my inside, where I live, the relationships I have, the food I eat. Every single thing is just mirroring different parts of who I am. And so when you start to look at life that way, there's not a whole lot of room for blame and not taking responsibility. And I don't mean that means that we're responsible for other people's actions. But what I'm saying is I've really had to dig in and look at me. Like if I don't like the story and I don't like the feelings that I'm having for most of my day, I need to really check myself and look at what's going on in there. And it's so important because I truly feel at the foundation of it all, this is why we're here. We came in to be the heroes and the heroines of our story. And, if everything was peachy fun and smiles and giggles, we may not get to it. And don't get me wrong, I think that paradigm is changing, and that's what I want, because I don't believe that it has to be painful in the same way to have the joy. And that's what I know for myself. I'm putting out there, like, I want to do this and I want it to be more joyous. So if there has to be some pain, let it be short lived. Let it be, I don't want to have so much pain as a stimulus to create change. Like that's what I have decided. That is my new paradigm moving forward. And whatever I can do to support that and vibe myself up as much as possible. And believe me, I have every emotion in every day. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, and I just have to own it. I just have said, you know what? I am going to own this. This is what makes me who I am. If I can get up and cry for an hour if I need to and feel all those different feelings and then show up for myself for the rest of the day, I have succeeded, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. And it's an exciting time, and it's also can feel a little bit scary because there's so much unknown and it feels new. The truth is, we're really remembering all of who we already are.
Yes, exactly. And you like said about crying in the morning or crying, whenever you need to. Crying is a form of releasing energy, at least in my perspective. And so, when people say I've been crying all day, I'm like, good, like you're releasing stuff, right? So that's part of energy too, right? The crying and releasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Move the energy however we need to,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Some people go for a run and some people cry it out, and both are okay. It's like pent up energy in our body because those feelings have turned into thoughts and stored energy. And then sometimes you just got to get it out and it's okay. And I feel like, we're taught so much not to be emotional and cry, but like a good cry makes us feel better sometimes. Like it totally relates to energy.
oh, absolutely. That's why we say, emotion is energy in motion, right? So like however you got to move it out and whatever works for you, the key is to just not get stuck in it, right? To realize and understand that the thoughts that are sometimes attached to the emotions is where we can get a little bit stuck as humans. And I know for myself, I'm like looking at, catching myself more. Like I have little things that I do, like a band that I wear on my hand, or just kind of when I notice the pattern, things that I say to myself to just break me out of the attachment to whatever that old is, because I really want to move into the new. And the new earth, and I will say, when I say the new earth, I mean it's been here, but we're really now so embedded in it. Everything has sped up, like you talked about the 5G and the atoms and all of the matrix that everything exists within. We are so bombarded with information, the speed of information and how much is coming at us. I mean, I remember 20 years ago when I started my shamanic journey, my elders would talk about that, and they would say, this is when we had Britannica encyclopedias, right? And we would look something up and now like there's so much information and things are happening rapidly. Now, what we have to learn how to do is understand that our manifestation gifts and abilities are also being fine tuned and kind of sped up. So, before it would take a much longer time, good or bad, to manifest something. Now we got to be a little bit careful, right? Because we're saying things and wanting things and it's happening more quickly. And that can go, that can be really positive. And sometimes it might be something that we don't want. Thank God not every thought gets manifested within 30 seconds because we'd be a mess. But it's so important to recognize that like we're really being like, I mean, there's so much amazing possibilities. That's really what I'm trying to say. It's like there's just so much that can come out of what seems like chaos right now. Once we learn to see it for what it is, like it's a story. There is a game being played. Like, where do you want to be in the game? Do you want to sit back and be observing it and be the master? Or do you want to be in it, like, and kind of getting like thrown around like a little pong ball, Like, I don't want that, So you got to
No.
decide, like, this is where I want to be. And if sometimes we get thrown in, we get bounced around a little bit, and then we're like, okay, I've had enough, jump back out, right? Let me see it for what it is. And that's why we're all here to support each other.
It's such a good way to view life. Like you said, it's like a game, and sometimes we take it seriously and sometimes we take it too seriously. And then you have to like stop and pause and be like, okay, where do I want to be and how do I get there? And not just let life like bomb you, all over the place. Okay, so what forms of energy medicine are there? Like, how is it actually used in practice? Like, when I think of energy medicine, I think of homeopathics right away. But like, there's Reiki and sound healing. Like, can you just list some of them and how
Sure.
you maybe use them in your practice?
So if I were to be completely like real with the answer to that question, the reality is everything is energy medicine, right? Like you said, from the time you walk in that door and we interact to the scent that's in that room to any, like it's all, technically it's all really energy medicine because they're all frequencies and vibrations. So if it's a supplement and it's homeopathy, if there's a device that I use that can interpret the energetic field around your body and then translate that to words, right? Then there are things that we can do that don't even involve touch, that can be like Reiki, where it's symbols or it's an intention. So I mean, the reality is energy medicine is every single thing because there's frequency and vibrations to anything that exists. So, what I do, and I get what you're saying too. Some people when they think of that, they think of the things that are more not the norm, right? Yeah. So if I were to kind of put those into a category, it would be things like that have things that are more fine tuned in terms of vibrations, right? Like essential oils, homeopathy, supplements, some of the devices that we use. I have a couple of them that can basically read the responses in the body and the reactions, and then kind of come up with what the system looks like if we were to take the energy and put it on a piece of paper, which is really, really interesting. I mean, there are biofeedback systems and different companies that use something called galvanic skin response, and it can literally tell you what's going on in your chakras. It can tell you your belief systems. I mean, it's just amazing what we can interpret, right? And take from the unseen and bring it into the concrete world. So energy medicine can be all of those things. And I'll tell you, when I look at where medicine is going, like I look at my practice, and I know I shared a little bit about this with you right before we jumped on. I'm really being stretched into where is where is the new medicine? And by new, I mean, what is it that I really want to do? Because even a part of me says this: if it's all about intent and frequency, then how are we really meant to do this? Do I need to take that supplement, or is there a different way? Like it's kind of stretching me to like look into what how do I take this belief if I truly believe in it and make this different? Okay, so 5G exists. And if I truly believe in frequency medicine and that exists in me, how do I do this differently and still have the support that I need? Because sometimes we need a little bit more, and that's great. But I'm telling you, I am being expanded and stretched into looking at how do we do this more naturally, even within ourselves and with these innate gifts and powers and understanding that we have been given from our God that says, hey, I am who you am and you are who I am and you can do this. Like you got to believe it and know that you can do this. You can heal your body. So I share that a little bit because I don't know. I don't know what my practice is going to look like in the next 6 months or a year. Like I'm just going to step into it and I know I'm going to be shown. And every time I've done it and jumped off that cliff, thank you, God, I've landed on my feet. So I'm just going to go with it.
Yes, you just have to roll with it. Like something is out there and it's going to show up in the physical and you're going to be like, yes, you're going to feel the vibe. You're going to, right? That's what it is. You feel if something is right for you or not. So I love that.
Yeah, I think, and I want to just say this because I know there's a part of me that's like, it's looking at how attached I am to things. And what I mean by that is, if I'm feeling like I need something, like I need this, and if I don't have it, ingest it or put it on my body, that something's not going to be okay. And I'm looking at that in my life, even with the natural things, because I'm not into putting a natural band-aid on either. I'm definitely not into the pharmaceutical one, but I'm also not into putting the natural band-aid. And what I mean by that is, yes, we need support and we better own and claim what we need when we need it. But I'm also really defining, is there something in me that's attached to the illness or attached to a belief system that's keeping me wanting to believe that if I don't have this thing or take this thing, then I'm not going to be okay? Does that make sense? And I'm stretching beyond that.
No, it's totally making sense because in my podcast episode that I recorded where I talked about my healing journey, I actually shared exactly that story from coming into your office and how when I came to you, I felt like I was doing all the right things, but I just wasn't getting any better. And the first thing you told me was stop taking everything on that list. And I was like, wait, what? No, I'm a Virgo. Like, give me a list and the times to take it and I will nail it. Like, that is what I do. And you were like, no, I want you to do nothing. I want you to go home and lay on your couch and I want you to like start journaling or something like in that space. And I was like, what? No, like I'm going to die. Like if I don't take this supplement. And it was that story I was creating in my head that I was like thinking, oh my gosh, if I don't do all these things, I'm going to die. And it was those 2 weeks where you sent me home and told me to stop taking all this stuff that kind of clicked for me. And I always have to try to come back to that when I have, a cabinet full of supplements. I'm like, do I really need this? Or am I just telling myself I need it because of, like you said, a story or something I read on the internet, and it makes perfect sense.
No, that's beautiful.
Okay. So question, because you said at the beginning of this episode, how you had like a cardiologist come in and say, what are you doing with all your patients? So it kind of leads me to think about side effects, right? A lot of times, like we take a pharmaceutical, even natural supplements come with side effects sometimes. So when we talk about energy medicine, and I think sometimes people are skeptical about it, but I always say it can't really hurt. Like give it a try, do all the things you're doing, but like open your mind up and give it a try because there's really no side effects other than growth or expansion. So how do you say that to people that are like, skeptical, but it's like, why not try it, right?
Right. No, I hear you. So I would say, as far as side effects go, if we term it like that, and I'm going to speak to myself and then clinically what I have observed as well is change. There's going to be change, and sometimes you have to be prepared for that. So like when I'm seeing my patients, and I know when I first started learning more of the energy medicine from the shamans, what we would do is while I was learning, they would do a treatment on me and then I would learn the techniques and then reciprocate that. And in about 3 months or so, everything in my life was in complete chaos. And I'm like, what? I was arguing with my parents. The relationship I was in was all of a sudden having problems. I wasn't feeling good physically. And I was like, okay, hold on. This is supposed to make me feel better and make everything perfect. This is not right. And I realized, hold on here. Like this is the stuff you were asking for because you wanted to be more real. You wanted to sit in your truth and like 100% be and own who you are. So with energy medicine, because you're tapping into that stuff that's in your soul, sometimes change isn't going to feel good because you have to let go and it's painful. And I'm speaking from my life right now.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah. And then there's the other part that's like, whoa, something's happening and coming in here that I have been asking for and wanting that's way bigger and deeper than this. And I'm going to trust it. So like side effect wise, you're going to see symptoms probably sometimes, not all the times, they might get a little bit exaggerated before it shifts. Don't get me wrong. The end point is the joy. The end point is the fact that you no longer have those physical ailments. In the process, though, what's going to happen is it might even get a little amplified. Things around might get a little stirred up. But then after that, the place that you go to is going to be way better and more beautiful than where it started.
Yeah, totally agree. And I witnessed that. Totally. I got into like my spiritual healing and into energy, and things in my life just started falling away. Like no matter how much I wanted to hold on to them, they were leaving. It was out. And it's like I now think back and think it's kind of like when you do a deep clean in your house, right? Like the room's messy, but then you start pulling everything out of the closet and everything out of the drawers, and you turn around and you look in your room and you're like, how did this mess happen? It got worse. It's so much worse right now. And I don't even want to finish cleaning now because I'm overwhelmed. But then you slowly start putting everything back. You put stuff back in the closet, you organize your shoes and then your makeup. And then next thing you know, you have this sparkling clean room that feels really, really good. But the journey to get there took you twice as long as you thought at the beginning. And when you tap into the energy, it does happen. And it happened to me. So yeah, I would say Side effect is change. Like you have to be willing to know that your reality and what's happening is going to look totally different by the time you're healed, right? You can't heal in the same space that made you sick.
Yeah, and one of my recommendations for this part, and again, this is something you've probably heard me say, and I say to myself and definitely to my patients, is, ideally, like when you talked about emptying the closets, we don't want to empty it all at one time when we're talking about our healing. So it's
Yep.
nice to build someone up and then move some things out, build them up, move some things out, because it's just going to help that process not feel so jarring and overwhelming, right? And there's enough going on in our world. We don't need to intensify. Like, people will come in and they say to me, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and I want to do it right now. And I'll look at them, like I said to you, and I'll say,
Guilty.
go home and lay on your couch. And they're like, did I just pay you for you to tell me that? And then I'm like, don't you worry. Watch what's going to happen. And it's really trusting. And that's some of where intuition comes in, and really trusting, like that part that says, hey, now it's going to happen. It's just you got to know the right time. And that's why for me, there's no one protocol for every patient or system of how things are supposed to happen. It's meeting you where you are and constantly looking at what you need in that moment to take us to the next. Because if we did everything, and believe me, I do so many things, and we can do, all the way up to stem cells. But if I threw that into someone the first day that they came in, they would not like me and they would not feel good.
Yeah. So sticking with that example, what you're saying is like you have to clean one room at a time and not like clean the kitchen and the living room and your bedroom. And then you're walking around your whole house and it's just a big chaotic storm and you don't feel safe or comfortable anywhere. Because I was guilty when I came to see you. I was like, I'll do it all. I can do it. I can handle it. And you're like, no, honey, like, I'm sure you can handle it, but like, I don't want you to feel that way. And everything had like a time line, attached where you're like, okay, you're looking good. Let's do this deep thing. And I'm so thankful that you could talk me off the ledge because I would have went home and just done all the things.
And then you would have literally been on a ledge that I'd be talking you off of, because
yeah, I would have been like, I'm never coming back.
And you'd be saying, what's going on? I don't feel good. I think I'm going to just jump off and I don't know if I'm coming back.
I know. But yeah, it was like those baby steps. And now looking back, it always makes more sense, right? Than when you're in the thick of it, because you just want to feel better right now. I want to totally switch up on something that's like really trending right now is all about auras and chakras. Like, I feel like this is starting to become like a known fact for people. It's really getting talked about in pop culture, like your aura, and there's like mystics and psychics like talking a lot about this. And people want to know, like, what's my aura color, or are my chakras balanced? So what the heck are these things? And like, how do they really affect us? How do you see it?
So, I mean, they're real. And again, like I said, these are scientifically measured frequencies and areas in our body where, for example, with the chakras, they're like these concentrated areas, okay, that people have found both scientifically and not, that, there's a certain vibration to that area. And then, of course, that vibration or frequency translates to other things like a color, a sound. It translates to being connected to certain parts of the human body, like a gland or an organ, right? So they're very real. And as we experience things in life, there are changes to our chakras on a daily basis, and then there's changes long term. So when again we're affecting the energy field or our physical form, right? Any one avenue is going to affect the rest. We're definitely changing, the chakras and the feelings. And so spending time, and it boils down to intention. So whether I'm meditating or, like you said, cleaning my chakras or working with my auric field, it's all about taking the time to set an intention that in some form I am connecting to the deeper part of myself that has a higher knowingness. So it's very real. People are becoming more aware, and they're becoming more aware of how connecting to those places can help them be better in their lives. And our auric fields are these, I mean, it's just amazing. And again, you can measure this, right? Sometimes I'll play a little bit and do this with muscle testing. And literally, you can see how far beyond your physical form your energy has an effect. And really, it has an effect to infinity. But we can kind of put a bit of a boundary on that, if we kind of measure it. But they're very real. And the more people are getting informed and educated, they're learning that when they take the time to connect with these parts of themselves, that they're feeling better and that they're healthier and more joyous.
I love that because I always think of auras like if you're ever like around someone and they just feel like magnetic, like you ever like meet someone and you're just like, oh, being around them just makes me feel like really happy or like really good. I'm like, their aura is strong and it's positive and like it's like a magnet. Like you're attracted to people who have like that positive energy, right? Like it makes you feel good to be around them versus someone who's just like, going through challenges and things. And maybe they're working on like clearing stuff out. And you feel that, when you're in their space, you're like, okay, their aura is like a little off. Like I need to keep my distance or maybe sit across the room or maybe not interact as much. And even people who are skeptical can agree, like you said, on that practical fact. Like we've experienced it and we know that to be a truth. Okay, so one other thing too is energy, like when you're doing energy medicine, like you're talking about the spiritual component and like supplements and stuff, all it's really doing is just helping the body heal itself, right? Like you're not actually like doing something to someone, right? Like there is energy transfer and energy exchange, but these things are allowing the body to kind of heal itself, right? That's kind of like the whole principle I like to bring it back to. Can you explain that a little
Sure.
bit?
So there are some different, I guess, techniques or ways to do that. So what you just named, absolutely. There are practices where it's just a matter of connecting with someone, and then recommending a supplement or things that can help support the body. But there is another whole, I guess, niche or category to energy medicine. And so, with my background being and working with the natives, for example, with people who truly believe that everything on this earth has a value, right? And learning how to appreciate and use it and replace it and not abuse it keeps the cycle in such balance. So they actually have techniques that they used. And so when I was learning shamanic healings, for example, there are ways that you can learn how to connect in a more direct way with those parts of ourselves, like the higher consciousness, and understand or see things or have support. For example, Native Americans, believe in your power animal. Let's use something like that, where they talk about, we all have this innate energy to us, right? It's like our fingerprint. There's a stamp on us that says there's a frequency to me that relates and translates to the energy or the vibration of an animal. And we can all have different animals teach us things at many times in our lives. But there's one that just seems to resonate with the core of who we are. And I remember that when I was kind of done with my training and we had this ceremony, I was told what my power animal was. And they said to me, okay, from now on, you are going to be snake medicine woman. And I swear to you, I was like, why do I have to be a snake? I am not a vicious snake. I am not, that has such a just not a good like stigma attached to it. Can I be a dove or a peacock? I swear I said this and they're just laughing at me, right?
Oh my goodness, no.
And I'm like,
you are no dove.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, what are they talking about? So then I started to realize the deeper things that came with that. And when I started understanding this energy medicine and using the techniques, which is a little bit different than just giving a supplement, excuse me, I realized that, snake medicine woman means transformation, shedding of the skin. It means I can lay on the ground and I can climb on a tree and be at the highest of the highs. So there was so much more involved. So when I was told about the snake medicine woman, I had to understand the deeper parts of it. And that when I went in and I used some of these techniques that helped me to know exactly what someone needed when they needed it. And it was like a laser beam, like the strike of the venom of a snake. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that is how I am. I am this loving, soft being. But at the same time, when I focus and I'm intense on it, man, I'm going in and we're going to get this job done. And I'm not saying literally me, Nyree, but I'm saying the space that gets provided for the God parts to step in and do what God does. And so there are different ways that energy medicine can be expressed. And this is just a little bit about how I was taught. And again, some people may agree or may not agree, but it's all about your intention and really your heart space. And for me, I have come to understand, like, I am a Christian, and that is such a huge part of who I am. And people ask me, well, how can how do you get these worlds to mesh? And I tell them, for me, they're so one and the same because I truly, truly understand that the more that I accept these parts of me and I allow them to be integrated in my life to do what God put me here to do, then how can I be more real and more loving to the God that I say I believe in?
Oh, I'm so glad you just brought that up because I feel like it's our human brain and it's like our society that wants to polarize everything. Like it's like it has to be this way or that way or this way or that way. And it can all be blended into one. You kind of like are the example of that paradigm because it's like, how can someone be a conventional medicine doctor but also practice holistic? How is that even possible? And you blend the two. And how can someone be Christian and like follow shamanic rituals? Like, how is that possible? And you blend the two. So I feel like you really are the epitome of like, look, this works because we are all one and we are all, what's the word? Energy. And it is all one, right? Like it really comes back to the theme of this whole thing. Like we just put a label on it and want to like put it in a box, but really like we're just putting things in boxes that exist all over. It can come out of the box at any time. So, I guess to kind of wrap up this episode, could you share with me and all the listeners like a favorite example that kind of comes to your mind, like a transformation that you've seen either in your practice or a personal life in someone that has used energy medicine, has like tapped into this part of themselves and like had a really amazing transformation or healing result? Like, is there anything that comes to your mind that you're kind of like always you hold on to it as that example of you're on the right path?
Sure. So I could think of quite a few. I'm going to pick one that has been in my life. This is a patient who's been in my life for probably over a decade now. And, we kind of see each other like what we would call maintenance as needed. When I first started working with her and she came in to see me, she was in the process of going through a divorce. And it was a lot of legalities at the time. She has 4 children and lots of financial complications with the ex, etc. So what happened? She also had Lyme disease, chronic fatigue, just all of these physical ailments that had set into her body, right? Because of the stress and decreased immune system, etc. So when she came to me, we did some of the physical and then I said to her, let's look at what else might be happening. And we decided that we would do some of the energy medicine and start doing things like EFT and meditation, and then some of the shamanic practices, and really getting her connected with her God self. And in doing that, one day, I will never forget this, we decided, all right, we've set these intentions. We're going to just do a little ceremony that shows like letting go, where we're going to have her set her intentions. We're going to put it into a little fire. She got some pictures and things that she wanted to let go of, and she put it in the fire. And within 2 minutes, my entire office was smoked out. And this had never happened before, even though we had done this with other people. There was so much smoke coming out the front door. I just happened to know, the head of the fire department literally comes knocking at my door like, what is going on? Like, do I need to call anyone in here? And I was like, nope, we're just doing some letting go, okay? So we finished this ceremony and, she's going about her life. And I mean, no lie, within about 2 to 3 weeks, she comes back to me and she says, you're not going to believe this. Like, things started shifting with the attorneys. She literally, with her case, she set new precedents in the legal system because of the kinds of things that she started to stand up for and what she put in. She created new laws, so her life started to take this turn. Today, she is thriving. I mean, she's living life. We all have our purpose and our lessons to, kind of transform. But what I'm saying is that part of her, she has so stepped into her power and owned it and is just vibing and flowing with her life very differently. So those parts that we could not see were the biggest pieces. And watching who she is today, I mean, this woman comes to visit me sometimes. And every time she comes, I tell her, I think you came here to help me as much as I'm helping you, because she is such a force and a power. And she walks in that room and she's like maybe 6'2", and it's not in her height, it's in her presence. And I'm in awe of it. And those are the types of things that we can see, for ourselves personally, and then for the people that we come in contact with. And I want to be clear, this isn't about having a perfect life. We're not supposed to have that. We're here to write this journey. It's all about how we do it.
That's amazing. It's such a beautiful story. And I'm sure like she went into it a little skeptical, like a lot of people do, right? Like, do you kind of feel that off of people? Like, even though they're like open to it and they're like, okay, yeah, like whatever you suggest, like you're the doctor. Do you feel that like vibe from them sometimes, that skepticness? Like, and how do you overcome that?
I
You
have
just keep rolling.
This is where I have the
right through
amazing
it.
gift. No, no, no. This is where I'm grateful that I have this gift of knowing how and when to introduce something. So there are some people, we may never talk about it in these words, even though I may be helping them by using my intuition and other parts of me. I really respect where people come from, and I am there to support them in the way that feels good to them. That's the most important thing. Number one, this is not about me, and when and if I decide to tap into those parts of me that can give me more information, it's really in essence to help them on their journey. And it's not a different part of me. It's just there. It's just there. There is a knowingness that tells me now is the time, now is not the time. Do this, don't do this. And I just kind of let that guide me as it always has. And I trust it. Is it going to work for everyone? No, but that still has nothing to do with me. Whether it works or doesn't, guess what? It's not about me. And that's why I tell people, don't put me on a pedestal. Don't come in here like, no, 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 no. Here's what. You're me and I am you. I just happen to know a little bit more in this area and you happen to know a little bit more in that area, right? And let's do this together as a team. But yeah, am I going to stand in my confidence and my expertise? Absolutely. That's why you're coming here to me. I'm going to own that part of me, and I'm going to allow that part to bring us both more joy, however we have to do it.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And it was like so important to me when I was going through my healing journey. And I just remember kind of feeling like you said, like we were a team. Like you asked me questions and you trusted that like I know more about my body than you. You might know more about the science and like what works and what doesn't work and what exists out there. But like I knew my body the best. And I think that's like missing a lot of times in like a practitioner patient relationship is like, you trust me that I live with my body 24/7. And when I'm telling you something hurts, like it hurts, right? And that alone is like an energy exchange that like lifted me up so much. So it always comes back to that. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that example. That was pretty awesome. And I hope it inspires some people to really just kind of open up our minds. We can be skeptical about something, but still give it a try, and I think that can be fearful for some people, or maybe think like, I've tried so many things, like who's to say that's going to work? But at the end of the day, if you don't try, you'll never know. So hopefully we've shifted some minds in this episode. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or talk about? I definitely want you to talk a little bit either about your practice or how people can connect with you or find you on social media. So please make sure you say that. But anything else on this topic or on just healing in general you want to share?
Sure. So I'd like to maybe wrap up with this, and it's about intuition. And I'll share a practice of mine that has really helped me. So if I were to look back at my life, and again, not with regret, but with wisdom, and say, what is the thing that I would have wanted to really do differently, or more so, what have I learned that stands out? It's about this. I am learning to truly listen to my intuition differently than I was able to do in the past. So what that means is this. I have, I guess, a practice that I do where if something keeps coming up for me, no matter what it is, it may be a person's name, it may be a feeling that I'm having when I'm in a certain place, it may be something that I want to do or don't do. I make a note of it. And I'm not talking about the 100 thoughts I have a day. It's the recurring ones. Or like this, if I ask a question to myself about something, really paying attention to what comes back. And I make a note of it and I jot it down. Like, for instance, the last week or two, a particular name has been coming up a lot. And I just kind of make a note of it. The reason I'm saying this is I'm sure if we all look at our lives, probably 99% of the times we had a feeling about something, we were right on. But it's okay. It's okay that we have to go through a journey or wait for the right time to make a decision. That part's okay. What I'm doing, though, is I'm fine tuning a little bit how I feel and what something is meant to be, and really looking at what the universe is doing with me. So I was sharing with you before we started, like I've been having these thoughts about really expressing my feminine self more over the last few weeks. And I don't really know what that means. I don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but it keeps coming up. So I'm just making some notes of it, and I'm watching something grow inside of me that's either going to tell me that's a fleeting thought or that's something I really want to do. I'm noticing how I feel in certain relationships, and I'm paying more attention to that. You know what? If I have a feeling, even if I don't know anything in terms of why I'm having that feeling, I am now going to act as if that is my truth instead of the other way around. So, what I mean by that is I'm giving myself the benefit of the doubt first, not everyone else or anything else. So, it doesn't mean that I have to know the details of why I'm feeling that way. But if I'm feeling like, you know what, this person is being dishonest, I don't know why, I don't know how, but that's my feeling. I am going to act from that place first instead of vice versa. I'm still going to be loving, I'm going to be kind, but I'm going to maybe do some things differently because I'm having that feeling, even though nothing has happened in my physical world yet that has shown me why. And you want to know something? I did that the other day. And at first I was like, am I being loving? Am I being judgmental? That's all that. Nope, Nyree, you feel this way. Go with it first. And do you know, in 2 months, everything that I was feeling, it, and again, not because I was co-creating it, but because it was a gut feeling that I just allowed to flow, I came to realize that the things that I was feeling had validity. And I was so grateful that I had put certain things in place and I listened to that. And so if there's anything I can share, it's, and this goes for everything when it comes to your health, all of the good things that you're doing that you feel, to keep doing them, really fine tune that inner compass that we all have, and just take some notes. It keeps coming up. Make a note. You know, I say that all the time. We ask the universe and God for what we want, and we're getting the answers all the time. I'm like, am I paying attention? Am I paying
Yeah.
attention? Because, you know, now that I'm writing it down, about 10 times this week, God said the very same thing. Every time I said, how do I bring more joy into my life? It was like, dance, 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 dance. And how much dancing am I doing? Not a whole lot. So I was like, okay, am I really listening? So if there's anything I can share as we wrap up, I'd like to leave with that.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And it's so true. I think we absorb so much information through our senses and like reading and society and social media. We're absorbing, but we're never taking that pause and thinking, okay, what do I really need to know? You know, what do I feel? I think you said that one time in this episode where you're like, how do I feel? And we don't ask ourselves that enough, I think, throughout the day. We don't just pause and go, how am I feeling right now? Am I feeling joy? Am I feeling stuck? Am I feeling frustrated? Like, because it's only when we can recognize these feelings that we can make decisions that, you know, move us forward or move us in a specific direction. So that's a really good place to leave off. I absolutely love that. Can you share how people can connect with you and get a hold of you?
Sure. So my website, it's drnyree.com, and it's doctor spelled out DOCTOR, and my first name, which is a little bit different, like I am, it's NYREE.com. And my Facebook and Instagram are all the same, Dr. Nyree. And when you go on any one of those, you'll find my contact information. I love educating. So if anyone who's listening to this podcast episode has questions, or they just want to know more, like I'm all about supporting, you know, and doing that, I guess, as effectively as possible. So reach out to me. Don't hesitate if you have questions or concerns, comments, anything that would help you progress in really truly being your light and feeling more balanced in this world, especially at this time. We so need the support of one another right now, and we all need our tribe. So if I can be a part of that tribe, I would be more than honored and happy to do so.
Yes. And make sure you guys follow her on her social medias, because you kind of brought it up, but you're going through this shift and this change and new vibes. And I want everyone that's listening to this podcast episode to be a witness of that and kind of see what new things you're going to bring into this world and what new creations are going to come from your space. So please follow her and let's all witness this unfolding together, because I'm really excited for it.
Oh, so am I. So am I. I appreciate you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for spending your hour with us. And I'm so glad this was possible.
Yes, me too. Me too. Me too. Have a blessed day, everyone.
And as always, whether you're cleansing or celebrating, cheers.